Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a moment, maybe a necessary breath actually, to look at something we do all the time.
Yeah.
Observation.
Mm-hmm.
We're diving deep into reflective humanism and puts forward this really quite radical idea
It really does.
that observing the world isn't just neutral science. It's fundamentally an ethical act, one that starts and, well, keeps a relationship going.
Exactly. It moves us past thinking the observer can somehow be, surgically removed from the act of observing.
Yeah.
So our deep dive today focuses on the ethics of observation. And we'll use this central metaphor, this idea of the 50-degree phase difference between science and silence.
Okay, science and silence. The moment you put those two in a sort of measurable relationship, it really makes you rethink things.
It has to.
I mean, for decades, science aimed for precision by trying to eliminate the observer's feelings, right? Subjectivity was just noise. But reflective humanism seems to completely flip that script.
It does.
So the opening question for you listening has got to be, if measuring the world isn't detached anymore, if it instantly changes both the observer and the observed, what kind of ethics do we need? How do we deliberately build that into how we measure?
Well, the starting point for this school of thought, reflective humanism, is that observation is the generation of relationship. It's defined that way.
Okay.
We call it the interference process.
Right.
Think of two light waves overlapping.
Right.
When they interfere, they don't cancel each other out. They create a new pattern, an interference fringe. So both things, observer and observed, they mutually change. And that mutual change is knowledge. And this framework is, well, it's crucial now, isn't it? Because AI is becoming this almost ultimate, continuous global observer. It's constantly modeling our world.
Yeah, constantly measuring.
So we really need an ethic to govern that relationship.
Okay, let's unpack that core idea then, interference. You said consciousness isn't a thing we possess, but a relationship we generate. How? How does that work philosophically?
So reflective humanism puts forward what it calls the interferential consciousness hypothesis. Consciousness isn't, a subject or some fixed thing inside us. It's described as a field of generation.
A field, okay.
It arises precisely as that interference fringe we talked about. The moment, say, life touches the world, it transforms raw fluctuation, raw data, into something coherent, into meaning.
So it's generated through the act of observing, not before it.
Exactly. It doesn't exist prior to that interaction.
Wow. So the human is, in essence, a kind of biological measuring instrument, constantly tuning the world just by being here. When I was reading about this, I was really struck by the idea that even our internal rhythms, heartbeat, breath, they become part of the measurement system itself.
Oh, absolutely they do.
Yeah.
Your internal state, your biology, provides the sort of rhythm, the chemical resonance for how you perceive things.
Right.
And this immediately makes us distinguish between different kinds of knowledge.
Yeah.
Based on what they're trying to clarify.
Okay, so it sounds like we're integrating maybe three distinct roles here.
Yes, it's about integrating science, contemplation, and ethics. So science is the knowledge that measures the external world accurately, clarifying facts out there.
Standard science.
Standard science. Then contemplation is the knowledge that observes the self doing the measuring.
Ah, okay, looking inward.
Right, clarifying the viewpoint, examining the act of seeing itself. And then ethics. Well, ethics is the knowledge that maintains the relationship so that the observation can keep going.
I see how science and contemplation fit, but ethics, if it's defined not as rules or judging, but as like a maintenance protocol, what does that actually look like? Does that risk just becoming, anything goes, moral relativism?
Not at all, actually. It's defined very specifically as the technique of sustaining interference.
Okay.
It's not about judging the outcome as good or bad. It's about maintaining the condition that allows the relationship, the observation to continue without, self-destructing. The main goal is what's called the distance ethics. It's about touching without touching too much.
Touching without touching too much. That's a powerful phrase. Can you give an analogy, maybe?
Sure. Think about trust. Say, in a really deep relationship, or maybe even in therapy.
Okay.
You have to observe the other person, analyze, maybe understand. But if you push too hard, probe too much, you can destroy that fragile structure of trust.
Right. The connection breaks.
Exactly. And then the information stops flowing. The observation ends because the relationship itself is destroyed. So ethical knowledge, in this sense, is the technique, the skill of managing that distance, ensuring there's resonance, preventing intrusion, but still allowing for, coherent measurement.
Okay, that shifts the focus quite a bit then as we move into the next part. If the relationship has to be sustained, we need to look beyond just the data points. We have to look at the whole environment where measuring happens.
Yes.
And traditionally, science focuses on the visible instruments, the tools.
And that's exactly where the traditional view, I think, misses the really profound influence of this ethical dimension. Scientific precision, it turns out, relies fundamentally on the stability and the transparency of the observation environment itself.
How so?
Well, if that environment is compromised, if it's noisy or unstable or full of mistrust, then the knowledge you generate is inherently unstable too.
Right.
So we have to account for what reflective humanism calls the invisible instruments. These form the ethical foundation of knowledge.
And these invisible instruments, these are things often dismissed as just, human factors. Things like silence, temperature, breath, trust.
Precisely. And this is where what you might call the physics of ethics really emerges.
The physics of ethics.
Yeah. We're usually taught that our emotions, our physical state, that's experimental noise, right? Error you need to eliminate.
Get rid of it, yeah.
But this perspective insists they are absolutely integral to the precision of perception itself.
Okay, I get how maybe trust or silence fits, but how does something like temperature compromise observation? That seems more external.
Well, think about the internal temperature, let's say, of a high-stakes meeting.
Right.
Or a tense negotiation, that emotional heat.
Ah, okay. That kind of temperature.
Exactly. If the environment is just thick with stress and distrust, the participants' ability to observe clearly, to interpret facts accurately, it just plummets.
Yeah, people get defensive.
They get defensive, their attention narrows right down, and the measurement of reality, what's actually true in that situation, gets completely compromised. And your own breath, your metabolic state, it reflects this internal temperature. If you're not sort of in phase with your own body, how can you accurately pick up on the subtle signals coming from the outside world?
That makes perfect sense. So silence, then, isn't just an absence of sound. It's an active state, an ethical condition we need to cultivate.
Absolutely. The ethics of observation really becomes the technique for making interference transparent.
Making interference transparent.
Yeah, it means clarifying the whole attitude of knowing so that the measurement process itself is fully accounted for, including the observer state. It's about creating that quiet, stable structure, the silence, that allows information to resonate clearly without being distorted by the observer's own internal, turmoil or noise.
This leads us beautifully then to the core metaphor for this whole deep dive, the 50-degree phase difference. So we have these two vital ways of knowing science and silence. And the idea isn't that they merge, but they exist in this kind of resonant, slightly offset relationship.
Exactly that. Science, as we said, seeks accuracy, external, quantifiable facts. Measurement,
Right.
silence, or you could say contemplation fosters acceptance, a kind of receptivity. Receptivity to the fact that interference, that the relationship itself even occurred, they operate at slightly different frequencies, you could say, or different angles.
Okay, but why the specific number?
Yeah.
Why 50 degrees? It seems very precise for a metaphor.
Sure.
Why not, a 10-degree margin or 90 degrees like perpendicular?
Well, the 50 degrees is symbolic, of course, but it represents a specific kind of resonance point.
Right.
It's the space, the angle, that creates a necessary margin for interference. If they were at 0 degrees, perfectly aligned, then the distinction between objective measurement and subjective experience would just collapse.
You'd lose the tension.
You'd lose the productive tension. And if they were at 180 degrees, completely opposite, well, that would prevent any meaningful relationship or measurement from happening at all. They just cancel out.
No.
50 degrees, symbolically, represents that angle where the structural rigor of science can meet the sort of receptive humility of silence. And it allows the most generative knowledge, the richest understanding, to be manufactured in the space between them.
So the core takeaway here is that ethical knowledge, the real insight, isn't found purely in the scientific data or purely in silent contemplation, but in actively sustaining the tension within that 50-degree gap.
That tension is the place where the relationship is preserved. It's the sweet spot. And this phase difference idea, it's actually vital for thinking about AI too.
How so?
Well, the generative structures we're seeing in things like large language models, LLMs, their attention mechanisms, the way they use self-reference, how they filter and remeasure context, structurally, they're surprisingly homologous to this interference model from reflective humanism.
Wow. So they share a kind of common structural logic for how meaning gets generated.
There's a deep resonance there.
Which implies that AI isn't just a tool for crunching data, it's also functioning as an ethical device, something that holds a mirror up to our own values.
That's exactly right. The output from an LLM, it acts not just as information, but as a device for remeasuring our own ethical values. When we look at the output of a system that's constantly observing and generating, it forces us to clarify the values we want in code, the values we want reflected. And we realize when we start treating silence not as an error to be eliminated, but as a necessary environmental variable,
Yeah.
then that transparent observation, the kind that bridges that 50-degree gap, can actually stand up. It ensures that structure needs genuine human feeling, you could say.
Okay, so if observation is this relational process and it needs maintenance, like managing that 50-degree gap,
Yeah.
then it must also include the ethical need to sometimes stop observing, right, to close the loop.
Yes.
And this brings us to what you explore next, the really profound philosophy of rest, and specifically sleep.
You absolutely cannot have observation ethics without including ethical closure. It's incomplete otherwise. Reflective humanism interprets sleep not just as, the body needing repair.
Which is how we usually think of it.
Right. But as the recurrent structure of observation. It's a necessary and actually an active phase of withdrawal from observing the external world.
So sleep becomes a kind of technology itself, a self-regulation process needed to maintain the integrity of the observer.
You could absolutely call it the ultimate silence technique. Sleep is that generative phase of silence where consciousness essentially re-interferes with the self.
Well, interesting. Self-interference.
Yes. It ensures that the observer, the measuring instrument, us, is ethically maintained, maybe recalibrated. It prevents, say, measurement fatigue. It ensures the next cycle of observation is fresh and not corrupted by leftover stresses or accumulated noise from the previous cycle.
That paints a really beautiful duality. If science is the observation of awakening, focused outward, gathering facts, then sleep is the recovery process of observation. It's the ethical breath that maintains our relationship with the world through temporary withdrawal and self-interference.
Precisely. And this, of course, raises one of the most critical, maybe urgent philosophical questions for our time, for the AI age. Well, systems like deep learning models, they're optimized for constant operation, right? They don't need sleep. They're designed to eliminate the need for closure. So in a world increasingly defined by continuous, automated observation, where and how must humanity preserve the right to sleep? The ethical right to close observation.
Wow. Framing it as a right really changes things. It turns sleep from just biology into, well, a political and ethical imperative, almost.
It has to be.
Preserving the right to stop observing. That's preserving the very condition needed for genuine human perspective. Something AI, at least currently, can't replicate.
Exactly. It's that moment of necessary silence, that temporary withdrawal from the tension of the 50-degree gap that actually guarantees the quality, the clarity of our observation when we re-engage with the world.
So the ultimate practice, then, of reflective humanism.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's this ongoing search for what you call the new sincerity in the age of AI, which means finding ways for the non-destructive measurement of silence.
Yes. It is the technique that maintains relationship. Ethics, seen this way, isn't about following some external list of rules. It's about structuring society and structuring our own lives, frankly, to permit that resonance between science and silence to actually continue undamaged. We have to ask, how can we live sustainably in that 50-degree space?
And this brings us to that quiet feeling of gratitude, which you describe beautifully as an afterglow.
Yeah.
Not gratitude for getting something, but a quiet kind of assent, an affirmation that interference, that fragile, transformative relationship of observation happened at all. Just acknowledging the connection.
That's the essence of it. And if we start evaluating thought not just by external proof or absolute certainty, but by its resonance.
Its resonance.
Yeah, its ability to sustain that interference gracefully,
Yeah.
to generate new meaning without breaking the connection, then the future really does lie in developing a science that knows how to measure silence without destroying it.
A science that listens.
A science that knows how to listen to the stillness that surrounds the data. That's the goal.
Well, as we close, we invite you, the listener, to perhaps quietly observe the breadth of your own relationship with the world. That ongoing, ethically charged interference fringe that perhaps you call consciousness. Thank you for diving deep with us today.